Mr. Kip Sorensen, good to see you. Even in spite of that nasty mustache that you have going on, the Tom Selleck slash porn stash that you have going on today. But
Dude.
maybe the windbreaker makes up for it.
Yeah. And you get your Windbaker at store.orderman.com. The
Right.
mustache, on the other hand, well, that you have to be
We
great to have
can't
one of
we can't
these.
give that. You have to earn that. We don't hand those out. So you have to earn the Tom Selleck stash there. So it looks
Yeah.
good actually. Like I think I like it. But you said your wife was not going to shave her mustache until you did, right?
No, she's like, I'm gonna grow something out if you're gonna grow something out. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll shave it. Yeah. She
Was
knows.
that
She
for
knows there's certain things that are not I'm not gonna deal with very well.
For sure, for sure. Women know how to push our buttons for sure.
Hmm.
So was that for Movember, or was that like a Halloween costume thing, or did you
It's
just
a
decide
little,
to become a man? Like, what is it?
yeah. It's a little of both. Little
All right, fair enough.
kids were like harassing me in the neighborhood, talking to me too much. So I thought, you know what? Let's grow this thing out.
What do you mean?
No,
You're
it
just gonna
was
scare little kids now, or what? Is that what the goal is?
really with the mustache on.
The molestache. It's
No,
been a
it
while
was
since I heard that one.
yeah, it was Kip and Yolanda, or no, not Yolanda,
Oh, that's right.
LaFonda. So
LaFonda.
that's what. Yeah, so I was
Dude,
Kip
that
for
Kip is
Halloween.
perfect for you.
I know.
I
People is
love
like
technology, but not as much
totally.
as you see. Oh,
And then the
Kip is.
guys at
I
the
never
gym
even
are
put that
like,
together, man.
I know. And then the guys at the gym are like, oh, training to be a cage. I'm like, oh man, this guy ruined my name, but
Training to
it's
be a
funny.
what? A cage fighter?
Cage fighter. If you remember in the show,
Does he
he's
say
like
that in
training.
Napoleon?
Yes, he
Okay,
does.
I forgot that.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay.
Dude, did that come out? That movie must have come out in '97 or '98, probably somewhere in there. Yeah,
Yeah,
Napoleon Dynamite. That's a classic, dude.
it was one of those movies you watched it and you're kind of quasi bothered during the show, like it it bothers you, and then it's funnier the second time. I don't know.
I
It's
think I
it's
walked out the
disturbing and
first
funny at the
time.
same time.
Yeah, I think I walked out of the movie theater the first time, and then I watched it a bunch more. I don't know why,
Yeah.
but and then it just, like you said, got funnier. It's perfect for. I think it was filmed in Idaho, but it's perfect for Idaho slash Utah culture. And if
Totally.
you were from Utah or Idaho, it's that much better of a movie. It's just
Yeah.
it's classic. It's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. All
Super
right.
funny.
Well, enough of Napoleon Dynamite and the molestache that you've got going on. Let's get to some questions today, man. It's good to see
Ah,
you. I've been out for about a week and a half. You held your own last week and had some
I
good
tried.
questions, and I think we got. No, you did great, man. And I think we've got some great questions for this week as well.
Yeah, and congratulations on the hunt. I was
Yeah,
following you
I
on
mean, I
Instagram.
was
Hey,
disappointed. I,
you still
look,
harvested.
I know, but I think anybody who's a hard charger and a high achiever can appreciate. Yeah, I mean, I got a doe, but I really thought this was the year that I was going to get a buck. And
Yeah,
I actually missed a buck. I mean, broadside at I
that
think
makes it
just over
tougher.
30 yards. He was just, I mean, just an amazing, just a toad. He was a good 8 point, and I just shot high, man. I think I got excited. I got a little buck fever and shot high, and I skimmed his back, like I nicked him because there was a little blood on one of my fletchings and a little hair on my broadhead, and that was it. But I didn't get any blood, any fat, anything like that, so I didn't pass through him. But I think I just went right. Look, an inch or two down, and I would have spined him, and it would have been over. But I just made a bad shot, man, and that was disappointing to me. So back
Yeah.
to the drawing board.
How long were you scouting? Or like, were you stationary? You know what I mean? When you
Yeah, it
saw
was a
that
whitetail hunt.
buck?
Yeah, it was a
Okay.
whitetail hunt. So we were sitting in tree stands and tripods. I think I sat in a tree stand for 5 days. So we would do 3 4 hours in the morning, 3 hours roughly in the morning, 3 4 hours in the afternoon. So I mean, 7 hours a day for 5 days, and plenty of deer. I saw a lot of deer, and took two shots. One landed, one didn't. That doe I shot was awesome because she came in, and I thought she was a fawn, but I thought she was small, and she came in and she walked in. I'm like, oh, she's a lot bigger than I thought. And I shot her, and I knew as soon as I shot her, I'm like, oh, it's a perfect shot. And she just sprayed blood right as I shot her. And then she ran 60 yards behind me, and I looked behind me, I was watching her run off, and there was just blood spraying which sounds gruesome, but it also means that you made a good shot.
Quick. Yeah, quick kill.
And she ran 60 yards maybe, and I saw her kind of do a front flip and just dead, just laid there. And there was snow on the ground, and there was so much blood, so it was super easy to track. She died quickly. I felt really, really good about that. Yeah, and the place that we go, like my friend Matt Schmigdal runs Sunset Ranch in Minnesota, and him and his dad and his brother, they just do a phenomenal job. I mean, they're putting in hours, and they're putting food plots in, and they're scouting the deer, and they're playing the wind, and they've got probably 60 stands that you can sit in. I mean, it's unbelievable the work that this guy's put in. And that's what a lot of people don't see. Is what they see is they see the harvest, right? And they think, oh, this deer just randomly happened to pop up where you happen to be sitting.
Yeah.
No. Like, these guys have put so much work into making it work, into creating a great hunt for me. And I think there was 5 other guys. And man, it was just, I've been going for 3 years with Sam and Matt and some other guys, Wayne, Sam. I don't want to name names because I'll miss somebody, I'm sure. But it was such a great hunt. It was just good to be there hunting, and it was good to be there with the guys. So there's a lot of value in it.
That's cool. Yeah,
and I mean, hunting next week for elk. So
for elk, cow or your bull elk or
bull elk. It's a rifle hunt in Colorado.
Okay.
So that's actually something I haven't done a whole lot of. I've been on one rifle hunt. I was sitting in actually the first deer. This guy, in fact, right there above me. I shot him with a rifle on my very first deer hunt. That was the first animal I ever took. So, but I haven't done a whole lot of it. So we'll see how it goes, man.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, and those games change, right? It's like hunting in the Midwest or back east versus like in Utah where everything's tags and zones. So your prep is like, oh, I got zone, Fish Lake National Forest.
Yeah.
I've never hunted there before, so here we go. Like, I'm going to try to figure something out. Yeah, it's like, it's a crapshoot sometimes because if it's not an area that you're familiar with, it could be really tough. I know my brother was up there and he didn't even see a buck the entire time. He just saw does, and it was a little tough.
Yeah, hunting is an interesting thing, man. It's very rewarding and fulfilling when you make it work, and it's very frustrating when you don't, and especially if you have an opportunity and you miss, you choke under that opportunity and that pressure. Man, that's hard. That sucks. I honestly, I thought I went out there with so much confidence. I'm like, this is the year, and just came home without it. My brother-in-law, Austin, first archery hunt ever. First day, I believe. Yeah, first day he shot a doe, and then the second day he shot this nice 8-pointer. And made a great shot. I mean, just right in the shoulder, broke her shoulder. First year. At 45 yards, just laid a killer shot on this buck. The thing ran probably 70, 80 yards, which actually was a lot further than I thought it would based on where he shot it when we found it. But, man, congrats to him. That was very cool. The only thing he did wrong is he set himself up for a heartache moving forward. And I think that's the hunting gods is like, okay, we'll give you a deer on your first time. Yeah. So he comes back, and then he comes back. Maybe he'll just be a natural born archer, but I was pretty proud of him and excited for him that he got that done. For sure.
He'll be walking around next year like, yeah, I'm a hunter. I got a buck last year.
Yeah, exactly.
Wasn't hard. Yeah.
Yeah. What's so hard about this?
Yeah.
That's actually what I did on my first hunt. I shot that buck with my rifle the first day, and then either the second or third day, I shot another smaller buck with my bow, and I'm like, well, that's easy. What's so difficult about that? And then every hunt since has just been painstakingly rough, so.
Yeah. So, and what a great example of life, right? Whether it's hunting or jiu-jitsu, where you're like, the minute you think you're got a little ego and pride, life reminds you, and, you need to stay humble.
Yeah.
So,
all right, man. Well, we've wasted a lot of time here.
Yeah. Should we talk about politics now?
Yeah. Let's
by
do
the time
hunting,
this gets
politics,
released,
religion.
We have a president elect, or maybe, I don't know. I guess if this draws out and the votes are too narrow, we may not know by the time this podcast is released.
What's your prediction? Let's put it out on the line. We're recording this on Tuesday. This is being released tomorrow, so this will be released on the 4th. So let's just go ahead and hear your predictions. I
have Trump not winning the popular vote, but winning in the electoral college by a narrow margin. I'm going to go with 279 to Biden's 259.
I am very much in agreement on that. I think I would line up just perfectly with that.
Yeah, I think, and well, this is all mute because by the time people hear this, it's already happened. But I think it all comes down, really, if Trump has Florida today, then we have a race.
He's going to win Florida.
Yeah, if Florida's,
I think he's going to win Florida.
Wins Florida early, it's
over.
Yeah.
Right.
So
no, I think Trump will win Florida. I've got a buddy, Sean Whalen. He's been on the podcast.
I saw his post. Did you see his post?
He thinks Trump's going to win California. I'm like, come on, bro. Like,
well, he has Trump winning 300 and something.
Yeah, I'm like,
yeah, every state but New York. I think. Yeah.
I mean, look, we can be optimistic, but let's not be delusional about California. And to all our Californian brothers who are listening, like, whew. Interesting times over there.
But here's the thing: is I pulled that up and I showed my wife, and she's like, "Oh, he's crazy," and I'm like, "So was all the people that said Trump was winning 4 years ago. Everybody would have said you were crazy."
California's not going red, dude. It's not going red. Not enough of them have left California and gone into Utah, Nevada, and Idaho yet. That'll happen in the next, I would say, 5 years. But not enough of them left yet to turn California red. No way.
Yeah.
No way. I just don't see that happening.
So, all right.
We'll know in the next 24 hours.
Guys.
Next 12 hours.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions. Ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Iron Council. So we're fielding our questions today from our exclusive brotherhood, the Iron Council. To learn more, go to orderman.com/Iron Council. And then if we get time, we'll hop into the Facebook questions. To join us on Facebook, go to facebook.com/group/orderman. Daniel Wyckoff, what are your fears and what keeps you up at night?
So I did review some of these questions. I like this question. I don't actually have a whole lot of fears other than, so the fears, like the ones that really stick out to me are the things that revolve around my children. So obviously making sure that they live a life that has plenty of opportunity, and speaking of elections and the way this country is going, like making sure that they have as much opportunity as possible, that there's as few boundaries and barriers that the government would love to set in place to our prosperity and freedom, and just ensuring that they have the best possible opportunities. That to me is something that keeps me up at night. It's something that concerns me. Are my kids going to be okay? Are my sons going to do what it is they want to do? Is my daughter going to be, safe? And is she going to be able to pursue the things that are meaningful and interesting to her? And the other one that I had thought of just the other day as I was traveling is just at some point God's going to call me home, right? And I pray every day that it's not until my children are out of the house. Like that to me is the biggest fear that I have, because I grew up without a father. So I know what it's like not to have a permanent father figure in the household. And I don't want that to be the situation for my kids. Like I look at my kids and I try to objectively analyze like how much they admire and respect and appreciate and need me in their life. So that's my biggest fear, is dying before my kids are out of the house. I don't want to die anytime soon, but I just pray again that it's done and God calls me home after my kids are out of the house. That is a big fear for me. Outside of that, it's not so much as a fear. It's just something I'm working hard to avoid, is just being average and being mediocre and complacent. Like I hate that stuff. And I don't want to be that kind of person. So I really charge hard in making sure that I'm excelling and exceeding and doing the best that I possibly can. And then the next thing is flying. I don't like flying. Those are my fears. I hate flying, man. I hate it. It's a scary thing
like
to me.
Real depth, thought process, and flying.
Yeah. And spiders. No, spiders don't bother me. Fortunately, there isn't anything venomous or poisonous that I think in Maine anyway. So, in Utah you had rattlesnakes and scorpions but here in Maine I don't think there's anything venomous or poisonous no snakes. Spiders aren't poisonous. It's too cold up here for that. So,
yeah. I would say mine are the same. I mean, it's really around my kids, probably more than anything else. I like, and which I think is insightful that our up at nights aren't things outside of our control. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, I mean, our kids are in our control, but you know what I mean? I'm not up at night worrying about something that I can't change. Right. And I think that says a lot actually about
because
our kind
again,
of mentality.
dying, you know, like dying.
Yeah,
like, I can't control that.
Yeah. But I think, how's this? But your concern is not so much about dying. It's about your children and making sure they have what they need before you go. Right.
Totally. So I spend a lot of time with them. Yeah. I get that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that's about how you show up in life. So, and yeah, mine's about the same. It's really about my kids, really more than anything else. Although it's interesting how I think it's like I'm doing EMT training, and as I'm learning about the cardiovascular system and respiration and all this stuff, it's like, I don't know. It's crazy how I'm more present to my mortality as I look at this. You're like, wait a second, like the lining of my blood vessels could be weak right now. I may not even know about it, you know?
Oh, for sure.
Generate an aneurysm and die, you know, like it's, I don't know, like just the thought process is like crossed my mind, like more and more about, geez. And so many of these problems that kind of, some issues that EMTs run into, is like these things aren't correctable, you know.
Right.
It's
right.
You know, you have certain problems with your hearts or your lungs, or you damage your lungs from smoking. It's like, there is no like, oh, well, start eating healthier now. Okay. It's like, actually, no, like you're now at risk for the rest of your life. Right. And the probability of you turning that around or having a long life like you once could have is gone, period.
Right.
Like there is no take back. Right. So
I thought about that.
It's causing me to be a little bit more present to that.
I think that's a great point. I mean, we are so fragile. I thought about that even hunting this week is, you know, that's a small stick passing through your body and you're dead.
Yeah.
You know, I shot that doe. You're dead. 60 yards. You're dead. You're dead within 15 seconds. One of my buddies who was there, Chris Ray, he shot a deer and it was super windy. He made a great shot, but the wind got a hold of his arrow and turned it, and it shot this deer and it hit it in the spine. Lights out. Done. I mean, we're pretty fragile. These meat sacks, right? They're pretty fragile, and it doesn't take a whole lot to turn the lights out. So I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying.
Little blood clot in your vessel,
you're done.
That might be in for you.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're done.
It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep.
All right, Philip.
Well, that was a lovely note to start on.
I know.
It's all good.
Hey, you know what? It's
the reality.
Life. Yeah,
reality,
it's life.
Exactly.
We have a tendency to kind of blow it off a little too much in regards to realizing that it is the one thing we all have in common.
Right.
We all will die.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, Philip Capadora, what is it the government can do for a person that we can't do for themselves?
Nothing. I mean, really nothing. What can the government do for a person that they can't do for themselves? Look, we live in the most free and prosperous times the history of the world has ever known. There's nothing. I mean, I guess I'm just trying to think about what it possibly could be. I guess defend against a foreign invader. Like, you couldn't do that for yourself.
But could you rally groups to get that together without a formalized government? Possibly.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But I look, you guys have been around long enough listening to the podcast that you know. Look, here's the reality. Governments are comprised of individuals. So what can one individual do for me that I can't do for myself? Nothing. That's it. The answer is nothing. So I would rather do it for myself and let other people do it for themselves and figure it out. And it's going to be painful. I think that's the problem, is so many people want to avoid pain. You know, even as I made that post the other day on Instagram about what I believe about America, you know, people were like, well, America's bad and evil. And look, I'm not saying that America is free of blemishes or that we haven't had our painful circumstances or situations. Of course we have. I'm just saying that we have more abundance and opportunity and prosperity to create these meaningful lives for ourselves and the people that we care about in spite of the pain. And the pain doesn't go away. The mess ups don't go away. The mistakes don't go away. It just means they're more manageable because there's meaning and purpose and fulfillment and opportunity to pursue the things we are interested in. And you're not going to find that on the planet anywhere else as much as you will here. So I'm of the mindset of let's get the government out of the way as best as we can and then allow ourselves to govern ourselves. And some guy came back and said, well, people can't govern themselves. Just look at the COVID response. The COVID response is irrelevant. I don't care if you're for lockdowns or if you're opening it up. Everybody's dealing with COVID. Everybody's dealing with the fallout. And people can take care of themselves. They can make their own decisions. So, yeah, I'm never going to look to the government to solve my problems. It's just not something I'm interested in doing. So, nothing. Yeah. The answer is nothing.
Well, and that's why freedom's at the root of what this country's about. It is the freedom to succeed and the freedom not to. The freedom to go, you know what? I'm not going to make it a priority, and I am going to screw my life up. Like, but that's so. But how much more powerful is that than not having a choice at all?
Right.
Right. Those are, and it's funny, and we've joked around this about, in the past, like, someone made a post, I think on Facebook it was about, conservatives are crazy because they would almost, they're willing to die for the sake of freedom. And I'm like, it is really, really important, like super important.
Well, and you're going to die anyways. So do you want to die a slave or do you want to die free? Like, I want to die free. And I want to pursue the things that are meaningful and interesting to me. And I want to be left alone to be able to take care of the things that are interesting to me and pursue those things. So, I don't like big government at all.
Yeah. And as much as people want to look at that scenario and go, look at suffering and pain and help people or whatever, I would suggest imagine a country where everyone took accountability, where people took responsibility for their lives and didn't expect government or someone else to fix it. Imagine how impactful and empowering that is.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say is big government, frankly, and this is going to piss a lot of people off when I say this, so be it. Big government is unmanly. Because what you're doing is you're saying that there's some entity or organization or group of people or collective that can solve your problems better than you can solve your own. And people will respond to that and say, well, what about those less fortunate? What about those who aren't able to take care of themselves? Well, okay, then we as individual men have a responsibility to provide and take care of those individuals. Like, I have a responsibility, if my family is struggling, to provide and protect and care for the individuals under my care. I have a responsibility to ensure that my neighbors are taken care of. If my neighbors across the street who are elderly are in a struggle, I will be there to help, whether it's mowing their lawn or running to one of them to the doctor or the hospital, heaven forbid. Like, I will be there to help because that's my job as a man, is to take care of myself and my own, and I consider my neighbors my own. So I don't need somebody else to do it for me. And relying upon somebody else to do it for you is unmanly. It's a lack of personal responsibility. Yeah. And Kip, you and I have been talking about personal responsibility and accountability now for 6 years almost. 6 years we've been talking about this. And it's only becoming more important as we continue down the track that we're going on. Oh, but Ryan, these people are less fortunate. Oh, but what about these people? What about these people? They're fully capable. I have belief in the power of the human individual. And for those who are not, because they're hamstringed by something like a medical illness or a disease, or even a mindset. Maybe they were raised in a situation that didn't. And look, I'm not going to pretend that I didn't come from a home for some of what it lacked. My mom taught me everything that I needed to be a good human being. I realized not everybody has that luxury. And so I had a leg up. Totally. I would be lying if I didn't say that I was fortunate in that my mother cared about my sister and I and ensured that we had everything that we need physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually to thrive and succeed. I realize not everybody has that. So now it's my responsibility as a man who has those things and an abundance of those things to then turn around and give where I can. Isn't that what it means to be a man? We produce more than we consume. And so you think about this for a second. As a boy, you're a consumer, right? You remember when you were a child, and you have kids of your own. They're consumers. We love them, but they are a consumer only. They consume energy, time, attention, money, food. That's what boys and girls do. It isn't until we learn to produce more than we consume that we become men. And so what this allows us to do, when my needs are met, let's talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for example. Air, breath, food, shelter, water, those are important. When my basic and foundational needs are met, and I no longer have to worry about those things being taken care of, then the abundance I produce can now be turned into a business like we're doing here, or charity work, or charitable contributions, or some sort of ecclesiastical service. But if you produce more than you consume, then you can take the resources that are in excess, that you have stored up, whether it's money or time or attention, and you can give abundantly to those individuals who aren't so advantaged as maybe we are.
Yeah.
It's just, we have a responsibility, and we as men, by design and by definition, produce more than we consume so that we can turn outwards and help other people who don't have the same benefits as we do, who don't have the same opportunities that we do, who aren't blessed with good health or having parents that love them or abundance of opportunity or education. But I don't need that mandated. All right, that's the difference. You don't need to mandate that. I think generally speaking, people are good and charitable and want to serve other people because we recognize that it's good for the collective and it's good then for us individually. That doesn't need to be mandated. Look at charitable contributions. It doesn't need to be mandated. It will take care of itself.
Well, and for people that might disagree with you and say, oh, it should be mandated, or I take that back. For those people that see a need, what's stopping you?
Right. Do it. Do it
right now. You don't need a government to implement a policy to take tax dollar money and do it inefficiently. You see a need, you see an issue with whether it's homelessness or opportunity in education or reaching out to other men, do it. Like, actually get off your couch, stop running your mouth about what's wrong with the world, and actually do something about it.
Exactly.
And guess what? You're going to be more effective on implementing something anyway.
That's the point, is that, if it's mandated, it's going to be less efficient. It's going to be less efficient than you doing it yourself or you getting a group of individuals to do it yourself. Can the government mandate it? Sure, through manipulation, coercion, and force. But I can assure you that anything the government can do, you and a collection, to your point earlier, a group of people can do it more effectively, more efficiently, because you're demanding or utilizing the principle of the invisible hand that Adam Smith talks about in The Wealth of Nations. That there's this invisible hand which is the incentive, right? The incentives that we have to do these things, that drives creativity, prosperity, ingenuity, new trends, new ideas. I mean, look at Elon Musk with his SpaceX, the SpaceX program.
Yep.
Look at what he's done in, I don't know when he started that. I imagine it's been maybe a decade, maybe slightly longer. I really don't know, actually. But look at what he's done in that amount of time, because it's privately owned. Like, he can be efficient. He can look at things differently. He can see things from a vantage point that the bureaucrats can never see and will never see. And how much more do you appreciate your dollar and your value and your time when it's yours, not somebody else's?
Yep. Well,
the way I spend my time is extremely important to me, and I ought to be in charge of how I allocate my time, energy, and resources. And because that's important to me, then I will ensure that I make the best possible decisions with that time, energy, and attention, based on what I'm after. Somebody asked about success later in the list of questions. We'll get into that. But success is autonomy. It's doing what you want to do, when you want to do it, why you want to do it, and how you want to do it. That's the only objective answer to what is success.
Yeah.
Anything else is less than being successful.
Yeah. And in your example, by you implementing that said program, you're going to attract the right people to do that job. Where
because you have to.
Exactly. You have to have the right person in the job to actually do the job. So you're going to get the right assets, the right individuals involved versus you wouldn't if it was government mandated, right? A perfect example of this is Underground Railroad. Those guys can do what governments can't do. And that's a really tough job. So who would be willing to do that? The people that it matters enough to them to actually step up and actually provide those types of services. So by default,
motivation.
they get the right people.
Right. They have the motivation, they have the skill set, they have the training, and those are the people they hire. And if they hire the wrong people, things go south. And then they correct it, hopefully. And if they don't correct it, everything goes south and it poisons the well.
Yeah. Yeah. Good times. All right, Evan Berwick, during your separation and divorce, how did you stay focused on yourself and your happiness? So I'm assuming during your separation and my divorce, how did we stay focused on yourself and your happiness?
I just felt myself feeling better about who I was. That's it. I just felt better when I lost weight and I got in shape and I got my finances in order and I started hanging out with friends and picking up new hobbies and reading and doing the activities that were good. The feedback that I was receiving, not from other people, but just the circumstances I was experiencing were better. And I just thought to myself, I want more of that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, at first it was to win her over, right? To win her back.
Yeah.
And then slowly it became, I mean, it still wandered into my life, but slowly it became, I like this feeling. I feel good. I feel confident. I feel powerful. I feel engaged. I feel like I'm building up trust and credibility and authority with other individuals. I like the way that I feel. And then she happened to respond to that. I say happen, that's too passive, but inevitably she responded to that.
Yeah.
Right?
But
like
it
that's
wasn't
just
the
the
focal
way that
point.
it works.
Yeah.
It's the way it works. And that's why I tell guys, if you're going through a separation or a divorce or some sort of contention or bitterness within your relationship, just fix yourself. Focus on yourself. And I had a gal email me several weeks ago, and she started the email with, I have a bone to pick with you. I'm like, oh, great, here we go. Because I've gotten a few of these over the years. And she blamed me for the demise of the relationship. And what she said is she said that her husband interpreted one of my podcasts as just completely shirk your responsibilities and don't keep her in the loop and just go focus on yourself and forget all about everything else that's going on.
So she even said that he interpreted as this.
Yes, that's what she said.
She still didn't see how that was his ownership.
Yeah, and she even said she listened to the podcast that was in reference.
Yeah.
Look, that's not what I'm telling you to do. And she interpreted that incorrectly, and so did he, if that's true.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's true or not. Like, that's just one side of the story. You know, somebody could be bitter and say, well, this is why. Yeah. You know, for example, I've kicked people out of our Facebook group, and guys will say, well, you kicked me out because I disagreed. No, not at all. I kicked you out because you're an asshole who happened to disagree with me. It had less to do with your disagreement and more to do with the way you responded. So let's not like conflate the two, that being a dick equates to just you disagreed with me. Because you disagree with me at times, Kip, and yet still here you are co-hosting this podcast with me. So it has nothing to do with disagreement and everything to do with the way that you handle yourself and carry yourself. Yeah. So I can't really remember where I was going with that. But look, the point is don't interpret taking care of yourself to shirking responsibility. Yeah. You still have a mortgage. You still have children. You still have a job. You potentially still have your wife. There's still obligations and responsibilities in which you signed on the dotted line and said, I will honor these commitments. Taking care of yourself doesn't mean you get to dishonor what you signed up to do. It just means you need to make sure that you are doing this in addition to handling your responsibilities. And by the way, if you take care of yourself and the feedback that you receive is positive, and it will be, by the way, it always will be. even if your relationship doesn't work out, because sometimes it won't. That's the truth.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you can go to your, yeah, I mean, and sometimes you can go to work on yourself and guys will think, well, Ryan, you had a success story. Your wife stayed with you because you went, look, it could have very easily went the other way. But that doesn't mean my advice is inaccurate. In fact, it will become less important. I'm not saying it won't sting, it will. But it will become less important, less relevant because you're in a better spot physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually.
Yeah.
So I don't want to lie to you and say that if you fix yourself, then she'll come back. I don't know if she will. I just know it'll give you a better chance. And I know if it doesn't work out, then at least you put yourself on the right path for the next woman to come into your life. And there will be other women.
Yeah.
But again, don't interpret my recommendation and advice of taking care of yourself as shirk everything else. No. Continue to manage what you have to manage. Honor your responsibilities and commitment. And in the meantime, figure out a way to work on yourself so that you can be more capable of honoring and upholding your commitments and responsibilities.
Yeah, totally. I have a perfect example of that. And whether my ex-wife intended to do this or not, when we got separated and we're kind of through this limbo divorce stage, I saw her constantly going out and having fun. And it was really interesting. And whether she was doing this or not, this was my interpretation, but I started realizing that she wasn't focused on herself. She was focused not on herself. She was focused on not dealing with like the fallout of our marriage. She wasn't focused on improving another. She was focused on excitement and having fun. And you know what I mean? And it was all about kind of like excitement and entertainment. And luckily for me, and once again, this is my interpretation, but luckily for me, I saw that from my perspective. And I thought, wait a second, that's not what I need to do. I don't need a hobby and distraction and fun and not worrying about focusing on myself. What I needed to do is get centered. I needed to focus on how I was showing up in life. I needed to focus on the kind of man I was. I needed to focus on integrity and honor. And that's the focus on myself that really became present for me and was agnostic to it. It had nothing to do with excitement, fun, and entertainment, and you know what I mean, all these distractions. And that is what allowed me to like have a kind of a transformation of the kind of man I was when I was married versus who I ultimately became through that divorce process. So my focus on me was a real internalization of how did I show up in life and who was I being as a man. That is what allowed me to progress and move on. So I don't know. I think that's a good example of when you say focus on yourself, it's not, oh, go to the gym a lot and that's it. Right. And right. Be an asshole and be a bad dad and never neglect your children. That's not what we're saying. Yeah.
Or, go out there and get drunk and get shit-faced and do stupid things and make bad decisions because you're focusing on yourself. I think you made a great distinction, and you talked about being entertained, and you also used the term distraction. And I think that's the line. Are you going out there and are you trying to entertain and distract? Or I would even throw in the term sedation, right? Yeah. Are you trying to sedate yourself from the reality of your circumstances by getting drunk or getting high or whatever it is you try to do? Or are you addressing it head on? And that's the difference. Are you going to the gym so you don't have to think about things, or are you going to the gym so you can make yourself more capable? Yeah, are you hanging out with friends so you can have some fun and not think about life, or are you surrounding yourself with men who are going to uplift you and hold you accountable and challenge you in all the right ways? Right? Are you hiring coaches and mentors? Are you reading good books to be entertained and just blinded to what's going on? Or are you reading a book that's actually enlightening you? Which enlightenment is not always comfortable. You think about light. Here's a perfect analogy. I woke up this morning at 5 o'clock and got ready to go into training. And I got out of bed, and I try to be respectful to my wife if she's still in bed, so I don't want to turn all the lights on. So I walked into the dark, into the bathroom, and I flipped the light on. What do your eyes do? It hurts, man. Like if you've been in the dark and you turn the light on, it hurts. It's painful, and you close your eyes, you're like, oh, I don't want to see this light, right? That's what we do. It's a perfect analogy for what some of you men may be experiencing. Like you continue to put the blindfold over your face because you don't want to deal with the pain of enlightenment. And enlightenment, what does that do? It illuminates. It shows all the nooks and crannies and brings light to the shadows and things that you've never dealt with potentially. And now all of a sudden it's right in your face and you're like, close my eyes. I don't want to see that. You have to see it. You have to see it. Because if you don't see it, it's not like the threat goes away. Yeah. It's not like if you don't see it, like a little child thinks when he covers his eyes that, oh, if I cover my eyes, then that threat can't see me. No. It's still there. It's still present. It just means you're not acknowledging it, which makes you weak. It weakens your position. Strengthening your position is, okay, I'm going to take my hands over my eyes. I'm going to open my eyes. I'm going to illuminate the room or the situation, and it's going to be painful and it's going to be uncomfortable, and I'm going to see all the little nooks and crannies I didn't see before.
Yeah.
But this is the path to creating a circumstance or a situation that I can thrive and excel in spite of the threat and the enemy and the challenges that come with life.
Yeah. And to be clear, that threat could be your circumstance. It could be another person. It could be you.
It could be the man in the mirror, right? When I went into the bathroom, I look at the man in the mirror, and that threat could be...
You're like, there you go.
The guy staring back. Yeah, for sure.
Josh Guerrero, Ryan and Kip, in today's society, it seems as though the weakness and mediocrity is encouraged and even celebrated, whereas strength and striving for excellence is often ridiculed and viewed as barbaric. What do you think led to this? And what can we as men do to reverse this trend and cultivate strength and excellence in our societies?
I think what led to this, not specifically, but I think the mindset that leads to this is we view other people's success as a threat to ourselves. And if Kip, you thrive and excel, you basically just wiped away the excuse that I have to do that for myself. Right? Because if you can do it, then I should be able to do it. So why am I not doing it? Oh, it's because you're not doing what's required. So I'll give you an example. So I'm going to go back to hunting here. So on this last hunt, I told you my brother-in-law killed his first deer with a bow. He's killed other deer, but his first deer with a bow. In fact, he killed
the second deer with a knife.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The third one, he did a rear naked choke on. He jumped on its back and rear naked choked it. So at first I was like, oh, damn, like I want to do that. I'm like, wait a second. The fact that he killed 2 deer isn't a threat to me. I mean, I guess I couldn't kill that particular deer, but there's other deer out here.
Yeah.
And it isn't a threat to me.
It doesn't mean you can't. Yeah.
Right. But that's how people interpret it. Right? Because, if this guy can do it, then it's a finite pie. This is how people look at it. It's a finite pie.
Yeah.
If he gets, then I can't. Then why? Of course, naturally you're going to be upset when somebody else thrives. But instead, I just took a moment to reflect. I'm like, you know what? How exciting must that be for him? First archery hunt, comes out here, shoots a doe, then shoots a buck. Like, how exciting. And why would I not honor that? Why would I not be excited for him? Why would I not celebrate with him? Why would I not tell him that I'm proud of what he accomplished? Because it isn't a threat to me.
What is that though? Like, do you think that's ego? Like if we pull
Totally
back
ego.
that onion a little bit, is that ego? It's like, oh wait, I'm not as good as he is. That is what bothers us.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
We
But
want to
is
be the
that
best at it. Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Is he better than me? No. Not in the grand scheme of things. Is he a better archer than me or a bow hunter? Maybe on that particular day.
Yeah.
And even if he is, so what? Let's say he is. Let's say objectively
Does
he's
that
a
make
better...
you any less of a person? Yeah.
Right, exactly. So what? He's better than me. You know, there's plenty... Tom Brady's a better quarterback than me. Does that mean that I have to think less of myself because Tom Brady excels? No. I think that's great. It's not a threat to me. You are better at growing a mustache alone than I am. Is that a threat to me? That's what but what I'm saying is at the end of the day, yes, people get upset because they perceive other people's successes as their own failures. They interpret it as, well, I'm a failure. Because again, to go back to what we were saying earlier, it illuminates it. It draws attention to it. Well, Austin shot a buck. How come you didn't? Right? You just illuminated what you failed to accomplish. So we do have to be very, very careful of comparing ourselves to other people and what they're accomplishing and what they're doing, because it doesn't, A, pose any serious or real risk to us, and B, it's just not helpful to get yourself in that state of mind where you're thinking you're a failure or you're a loser. How's that going to help you thrive next time? It's only going to place more undue pressure on yourself, and you might choke again because you're feeling this added pressure that doesn't really exist, that you created yourself. Yeah. So I found that the best thing that you can do, and I think that's what this gentleman was asking. Who was it, by the way? What's the guy's name?
It was Thomas? Josh.
Oh, Josh. I think the best thing that you can do, Josh, is just go to work on yourself. I mean, I hate to beat a dead horse, but if I get back from a hunt, because we're on that analogy, and I feel like I didn't perform adequately, do I rag on everybody who did? Or do I just go out and take a few more shots? That's what I'm doing. It's like, oh, okay. Well, I got to go back to, I missed that shot on that buck. Why did I miss it? Oh, I missed it because you got excited or because you pulled or because whatever. It could have been 1,000 different things. So let's go through the list and address those things and work towards it so that when I go do it next time, I'm that much better. Because focusing on what somebody else did and how their performance was isn't going to make me better. It isn't going to make me better to focus on the fact that my brother-in-law was able to get it done on 2 deer and I was only able to shoot 1. That doesn't make me better.
Yeah.
In fact, if anything, it makes me worse because I'm not willing to acknowledge that I need some practice, which is obvious as a parent. But it is, to your point, a very ego-driven mentality of like, well, he just got lucky. Oh, well, man, if I had this situation,
I could have.
Well, then I would have, like, oh, that deer was in this and he was in perfect situ. So if I was there, I would have done it too. Well, who's to say that actually would be the case? You still got to perform under pressure. And he got it done. And that's good. I should be excited about that. And here's the thing about celebrating other people's success. I'm going to come at it from 2 different angles. There's 2 sides of the spectrum here. One, celebrating people's success, and the other side of the spectrum is shitting on other people's success. So let's talk about crapping on other people's success first. If you're downplaying other people's success and you're writing it off as luck or just some happenstance and you're diminishing what it took to get there, then basically you're hamstringing yourself because you're saying to yourself simultaneously while you're telling somebody that they're lucky. Like I have guys who will say, oh, Ryan, you must be lucky to have the job that you have. Lucky? What the hell are you talking about?
I hate that. Yeah.
I've been rejected and dismissed and mocked and ridiculed. I'm not going to say more than other people. I'm sure there's people who've been more so than me, but enough that it's an obstacle that I've had to overcome, that I actually have to share my thoughts with you and basically say, judge me. We put out 600, maybe 700 podcasts at this point, and every single one of them is an invitation for hundreds of thousands of people to judge my thoughts and my intellect and the way I communicate and the way that I look. That's not luck. That's a hell of a lot of work and scary and fear.
Yeah.
So when you say, well, he just got lucky, or, oh yeah, if that situation, then I would have too. Basically what you're telling God or the universe or whatever, however you choose to look at it, is like, well, I guess I'll just wait here, hands crossed, hanging out. I guess when my ship, comes in, then I'll be lucky too.
Yeah.
And now you just made yourself weak because you're waiting and you're playing this passive game of hoping something happens. But if, on the other hand, I acknowledge what it takes to be successful, whether it's a successful podcaster or archer or business owner or jiu-jitsu practitioner or whatever, and I acknowledge as objectively as possible the amount of work it must have taken to get to that point, then what I'm doing is I'm acknowledging the path that I too need to walk, which is painful and long and frustrating and filled with highs and lows, and I'm objectively accepting and embracing the path that I need to walk in order to have the success that other people need to walk. And by the way, if somebody happens to be fortunate or get lucky along that path, does that mean that I no longer need to walk the path myself? No, of course not. Some people get lucky, and that's all it is. But I'm not going to diminish it, because when those opportunities present themselves, and by the way, they will, we're all going to be presented with fortunate opportunities. People say, "Oh, Ryan, you're so lucky with the podcast." No, I did a lot of work. And also, let me just be willing to admit this, that I started talking about this at a very fortunate time. The timing was very fortunate. It wasn't like I planned it out. I was like, I want to talk about this. And the timing was very fortunate. And I happened to have other circumstances in my life that were beyond my control that led to this point. But I want to be prepared when that time arrives and that time happens. So I choose not to dismiss people's success as luck. It's destructive. It keeps you from accomplishing what you want to accomplish. So when somebody achieves something, here's my thought process. Congratulations first, because I think congratulations are in order. If somebody achieves something, I think you ought to congratulate that person. Congratulations. And then the next step is, how in the hell did this guy do this? And then you study it, and you break it down, and you analyze it, and you process it, and you apply it, so that you can then go out and replicate and duplicate the same thing that this guy did that you're maybe otherwise jealous or envious of.
Totally. I really like this. I want to suggest another related angle, because his question was like, it seems that weakness and mediocrity is encouraged and celebrated. And I think for some people, the root of that celebration is that we think our circumstances define us, that who we are as an individual, that we're at the mercy of our circumstances. And I think it's victimhood. So, oh, poor Ryan, he was raised in a bad circumstance, and I'll give him all types of excuses of why he can't achieve in life. And you know what I mean? And then we almost like pander to someone that has a tough circumstance, and then they make it their story and their sob story and their excuse for why they have done nothing with their lives and why they can't succeed like other individuals. And now everyone else is lucky because they started off in a better position than them, or right. It was luck, or it was whatever. And we celebrate this circumstance of unfortunate situation and circumstance that you may have gotten as a child. And this is how it relates to what you're saying is, how do we get past that? You're inspiring despite your circumstance. That you end up becoming the David Goggins that now every other guy that was raised by an abusive father goes, oh shit, what's my excuse? You have no excuse. If you're around a David Goggins that you see his upbringing, now what's your excuse for not being amazing in life? His circumstance, obviously, well, better yet, his circumstance defined him, made him a better man. Right? He wasn't at the mercy of it. It's what made him great. And last AMA, one guy mentioned about having a stroke like a few years ago. And I was kind of like, the thought crossed my mind is like, and I know it, I'll think of even my son, right? My son has Usher syndrome. He's going blind, and he has a very hearing loss. Now, he could feel sorry for himself, right? Oh man, I have a horrible circumstance. And most people would buy into it a little bit. Yes. Yeah, you're right. You know what? That is horrible. How do you get people to move beyond that and not celebrate bad circumstances and celebrate excellence and striving for becoming better? You rise above your circumstance. And now what a great opportunity he has to be amazing and inspire people, because he's going to do something with his life that other people would give up.
Yes.
The guy with the stroke, he can use that as an excuse for the rest of his life, and no one will ever question it. But when he rises up and becomes a better man because of it, that's how you get people to start celebrating excellence.
It's well said. Another example I think of is, well, let me say this. I think in society collectively in general, because things are so easy, we become overly empathetic. Empathy is good. Understanding, compassion, it's all good. But when we take it too far, we actually hinder the people that we pretend to care about. So this guy in the Facebook group the other day posts something about he's in a wheelchair. Did you see this one by chance?
I didn't.
Okay, so the guy's in a wheelchair, and he was basically upset that women would look at him or wouldn't talk with him, or they were being superficial because they saw him in a wheelchair and
felt like
they didn't
saw
want to
pander to him or whatever. Yeah.
And I was like, look, I don't give a shit if you're in a wheelchair. I don't care. Okay? I don't care about your excuse. And look, if you're in a wheelchair and you're listening to this, or you have some sort of quote unquote physical disability, I don't give a shit. Because it is what it is. And I know people with quote unquote disabilities. I had a blind guy on the podcast, 100% blind, climbed the 7 tallest peaks of each continent, kayak down the Colorado River solo by himself. He can't see a thing. I don't care what your excuse is. It doesn't matter. It's life. Your son, nobody cares about it. And I know that sounds like harsh, but if you can teach that to him, like, nobody's going to feel bad for you. This is your hand. And it's unfortunate. It is unfortunate. Yeah. But this is your hand. So how do we use this hand and play it the best that we possibly can? So when this guy is in here, I'm thinking to myself, man, stop complaining about you being in a wheelchair. Imagine if you exerted half the energy about you thinking women are superficial. And by the way, just because a woman chooses not to be with you doesn't mean she's superficial. Like, that's going to be a different life for her.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
Like, she gets to make that choice. She has a vote in the matter. Okay? Yeah. So if you spent half as much time worrying about what the way people perceive you as you do overcoming this perceived disability that you have, can you imagine what your life would look like? Like, how many mountains would you have climbed by now? How many rivers would you have kayaked by now?
Yeah. Totally.
Like, we all have shit. We all have baggage. Some worse than others. I know people have it worse than me. And the world doesn't care.
Yeah.
So embrace that and rise up in spite of it.
Yeah. And what's interesting in this, Ryan, is if you had two guys that had equal success in life, and one had the right father, had the trust fund, went to the Ivy League college and did all those things, and then the other guy was poor, farm boy, uneducated, had no dad, which one's more inspiring? The one with the crappy circumstance. Who wants to listen to the guy that had everything handed to him and life was easy and he overcame to become a better person? Like, that's not inspiring.
Right. Of course not.
So there's opportunity that presents itself to the guy with the poor circumstance. He actually has opportunity to be inspiring to people where the other guy doesn't.
I agree. And look, I mean, I know it is interesting. It's an interesting perspective, but I think we ought to be careful of saying that. And I see your point. I just think we need to be careful of saying, well, I can be inspiring.
Yeah.
Right? Because that might come across as like seeking some sort of external validation. No, you can accomplish a hell of a lot in spite of your circumstances. Yeah. And how good will you feel about yourself?
Yeah. Back to focusing on you earlier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let that be the outcome, not the focus. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yep. All right.
We beat that one up.
Yeah. I don't think we beat it up. I think people who are listening, and I don't care what your circumstance. I don't care if you came from a poor background. I don't care if you came from another country. I think of Bedros Koulian, who's a friend of mine. He came to this country, and his mom and dad literally had to steal, in other words, gas out of people's cars to wash his hair out because he had lice when he was a kid. Like, that's how poor and destitute they were. They were stealing gas to wash their children in.
Yeah.
I don't care about your circumstances because Bedros is crushing life in spite of all that. Eric Weinermayer, the gentleman I was referring to earlier, has climbed the 7 highest peaks on each of the continents, kayaked down the Colorado River, and he's blind. I don't care, and nobody else cares about what hand you think you were dealt. How do you interpret the hand and how do you play it is actually what matters.
Yeah. I feel like
what else?
We should end with that, but what's your one question? Right.
Okay.
Bart, Freebert. Ryan, now that you have your blue belt, do you see your game developing faster or more naturally in any specific areas? And what is your go-to techniques and submissions? And what do you have the most trouble with?
I'm worse as a blue belt than I was as a white belt because the expectation wasn't there when I was a white belt.
Yeah. Or the expectation you had on blue was inaccurate. And now that you're there, you're like, oh, okay.
I swear, I don't know if this is true for you, Kip, but when the evening that I received my blue belt, honestly, everybody got like 35% better. Like as soon as I put my belt on. So either they got better or I got worse or a combination of both, but something very surprising happened in that I got my ass kicked in a whole different way as soon as I put my blue belt on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
it's true. I think it happens all the time. Every
of
belt,
course,
it
I
happens.
think everybody deals
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah. And you're a different target for certain guys, right?
Oh,
So
of
now
course.
they're like,
White belts
hey,
want to take out the blue belt.
yeah. White belt's like, hey, am I ready for my blue belt? Let's see. Let me roll with Ryan, you know?
Yeah, it's good. It's all good. It makes it better. So
Go to technique submissions.
I actually really, really enjoy the pressure game. Like Kip, I think that's where you and I differ. Like
Yeah.
you're flexible, you're nimble, you use your long limbs really, really well. I don't like that game, and I struggle with guys that play that game because I want to be close and I want to be tight and I want to like just pressure and even when I roll with guys who play the pressure game, I like that better because like they're putting all their weight on me and I like that game. And then somebody comes in like Ty Nichols is like that. Keegan Roberts, Pete's son, is a lot like that. He's very nimble. He's very flexible. I actually really, really struggle with those guys because I just don't have that dexterity and that speed. I can develop that. I just like to play like the in your face, not dirty, but just like rough,
tight.
game.
Yeah.
I like that.
A lot of pressure. Yeah.
I like that game a lot. So if I can get into your side, I feel like I can put a lot of pressure on a person, and that sets up some things because I can do that. But if they start stretching me out and spreading me out, like I think about the guy I roll with, Ryan Daggett, who's probably 6'3", 6'4", super long limbs.
Yeah.
And he just stretches me out. He likes to play the spider guard and the lasso guard. He likes to play those games, and he's super good at it. He gets me in triangles and he sweeps me all the time because he just gets me spread out. And I'm like, I just want to be close. I want to be compact. So my go-to game is the tight pressure game, and I struggle with space and flexibility and dexterity. It's something I definitely need to work on.
Is there a typical couple submissions that you're kind of mostly looking for? That's, you know what I mean? How you kind of go in seasons where a submission might be on your mind more than other typical submissions, and that's kind of your go-to temporarily for a period of time.
Yeah, I mean, like my favorite submission is like a triangle choke from side control, you know, where they lift their arm up and you can grab their neck and grab and lock in their other shoulder. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. And step over,
a
step over triangle from side control, or
I actually stay on the side and I just flatten out.
Okay.
Like an arm triangle.
Oh, arm triangle. Got it.
Yeah.
You'll expose the one arm and then you'll go deep and got it.
Sink my head down. So I like that arm triangle a lot.
Nice.
Because people really step into that one. I like chokes, like any sort of like gi chokes, lapel chokes. I really am focusing on those. And I'm actually focusing a lot lately on using the lapel as a tool for submission and control. So how do I control this individual from, like shrimping away using their lapel, and how do I keep them? Because again, I like the pressure game, so I want to keep them close.
Pinning them down.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I can grab one of their lapels and swing it around their shoulder or back behind their neck, I've got more control of them. Them being able to shrimp away is going to be harder for them to do. So if I can, I like that's why I do gi. No gi would be more difficult. I don't train a whole lot of no gi, very, very rarely, in fact. That would be more difficult because I couldn't pin that individual to me the way I can with a gi.
Yeah. Got it.
Like leg triangles, I suck at them. I have super short legs, so it's really hard for me to, not that I can't do it, it's just hard for me to get that
The
that
setup
triangle
is harder.
deep
Yeah.
enough to actually sink it in and lock it in.
Yeah.
So
One thing's for sure though, once it's synced in, you'd be done.
yeah, because it's
You know what I
locked
mean?
in and
It'd be
it's
so
tight.
tight. Yeah.
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 Huh.
What about you though? What game do you like?
Yeah, right now it's just, for me, just Kimura. Everything's just Kimura. So I really that not so position wise, like I've been trying to work like a high mount a lot. I really like a high mount where the guys' arms are extended. They're, you know what I mean? They have
Super
no
uncomfortable.
strength.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just legs can't get into the game. It's just miserable. I like that. I like that position, but I just really love a Kimura and Americana. It's just always on my head, on my mind.
From
like
side control. From
yeah,
wherever.
kind of from wherever, right?
Yeah.
Like last night we're training. I'll even, it sounds kind of crazy, but from bottom, I will grab an Americana when I'm in someone's side control, just to bait them to attack my arm. And if they don't, I can actually use it to sweep them and get them in a Americana from top. So, and so I'll even go for a Kimura from bottom, from a really crappy position, and they have a choice. They can counter it and Kimura me, which forces their hips.
That's a neutral position, essentially.
Exactly. But they have to adjust their hips, which removes pressure off of me, which then allows me to escape. And if they don't, then I get my legs involved, and now I have the Kimura, right? So there's just that Kimura trap is constantly just on my head. It's just, I can't stop thinking about it. So
that's interesting, because what I'm hearing you say is, and I've known this about you because we've had the opportunity to train a little bit together, is you're thinking so far ahead. You're like, I'm not even doing it to get it. Now, if I can get it, great. But if I don't, it's actually just there to set something else up. And so that's a really interesting.
Yeah, I've focused in enough on the Kimura that I'm going deep enough with it that I'm now having to address all the typical counters.
Right.
So, and I'm doing enough to my teammates that they're now going like, oh, hell no, you're not going to get that. Like, I fell for that already. Now they're countering. Then I'm like, okay, how do I deal with this now? Right. And instead of giving really up, cool. Yeah. And so instead of giving up and going, oh, I'm now going to move to this, it's now like, oh, actually, if they defend this way, I can approach it from a different angle now and still get it. Right. And so it's opening up, and I'm going deeper with my options. Yeah.
You know, that evolution is funny. So I've been training with Brody Cousineau. That's like my main training partner, because we go 2 to 3 times in the morning, and then I train with Pete and the rest of the guys in the evenings. But like 3 weeks ago, we trained, and he got like super good overnight. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, he submitted me 3 or 4 times one morning. Yeah. Which like isn't totally common. So I'm like, what in the world is going on? And I couldn't figure it out.
This is pre-workout, discipline go.
That's all it is. The end. There's our ad spot for the day. So I'm like racking my brain. I'm like, what is going on? Because you do that, right? You're like thinking, you're like, why did that? Like, I'm replaying
Yeah, like that's not normal. Yeah.
Yeah. And over the next several training sessions, you know, kind of like went back to the way that it was in the past. And I'm like, I wonder what happened there. Well, the other day we were talking, and he shared something with me that told me what happened. And he said, well, so I've normally been playing defense. And he thought to himself that week that he really wanted to play offense. Well, I wasn't used to him playing offense.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, I played offense for that week, and then you started to evolve to the offense, which made it harder to submit you because you learned. And that's what it was. Like, he was playing a different game that I wasn't used to. So I had to evolve my game in order to meet his game that I wasn't aware that he was playing. Yeah. And so it's that evolution. So today we were training, and he's like, man, I feel like I'm getting worse. And I said, you're not getting worse. You're getting better. But both of us are getting better. And that's making it feel like you're getting worse. It's not that. It's because we're both getting better, and you just haven't evolved to this thing yet. But you will, and then I'll have to evolve to that, and then you'll have to evolve to me, and I'll have to evolve to you, and it's just this constant accordion effect. You know, so you'll get caught in all these things, and you're like, what? How is this happening? It's because you've never seen it before. You You haven't learned that game yet. It's interesting, man. It's like, obviously it's physically stimulating, but it's mentally stimulating as well.
Yeah. Well, and it's your shirt, right? It's iron sharpens iron. Like
Totally.
we have a guy, he has a fight in 2 weeks. And so
I saw that on Instagram.
We're preparing for his fight, and guaranteed, like if he loses that fight due to submission, all of us should feel like it's our fault.
Yeah. You're his team.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I wasn't good enough to show him a level of difficulty that made it hard enough to go against that guy.
What he was going to face.
If we made it easy on him in practice, we didn't prepare him.
Right.
And it was our lack of ability that allowed him to get submitted.
Right.
Right. And that's why teammates are so critical.
Teammates, but just other men in your life. Like, forget about jiu-jitsu for a minute. You know, I know a lot of you guys are looking for men in your corner. That's exactly why. Like, you're not going to be able to evolve as quickly on your own. You can't. How could you possibly evolve on your own? Yeah. You have to have other people pushing on you in a good and positive way. The other thing I was going to say that I've been working on, Kip, too, is I usually play to the left side on my guard. So like I'll go to my left hip, for example, and I'll play to that side.
Which is the typical side that most guys pass on.
Right, because they're right-handed.
Yep.
So I guess, maybe, I don't know, but whatever. So lately I've really been focusing on don't play to that. But it's super hard because when I play to my right side, I'm way worse on my right. Of course, obviously.
Yeah.
And so ego comes in. It's like, just go back. Just go back to, I'm like, no.
Yeah, I want to win right now. Yeah.
Right. And that's not the goal. See, that's the problem we have is we think, okay, I want to win right now. And that sounds like it's the goal, but it's not. In jiu-jitsu, the goal is not necessarily, unless you're in a tournament, to submit your training partner. That's not the goal of training. The goal of the tournament is that, yes. But the goal of training is not to submit your training partner. And I'm learning that because I thought that was the goal. It's not. It's to make yourself better, which means that you got to stop playing to the left and start playing your guard to the right. Because, yes, you may not submit him, but it doesn't matter because that's not the goal. The goal is to get better, and that is making you better. Or if I always go after the same choke, it's like, I know I can get this. So why would I do that? Because it's easy.
Yeah.
And it feels good when you win and you tap somebody. It's like, okay, don't do that anymore. Like, that's cheating at this point because you know you can get it. So just go on to something else and get better. So we got to, and I'm trying to liken this to life in general, is stop cheating to your strengths. I mean, yes, when it counts, yes, use your strength when it counts. But when you're training, shore up weaknesses, shore up other areas, make yourself more capable so that when real life hits, you'll be able to deal with it with as like a broad array of tools in your arsenal that you can use.
Yeah. And the more you avoid your weaknesses, the longer they'll continue to be a weakness.
And everybody will exploit them.
Yeah.
Like you will be, I mean, this is, I mean, you and I have talked about this, but this is the idea of vulnerability. Like, why would we be vulnerable? The only reason to be vulnerable as a man is so that you can acknowledge it and actually shore up your vulnerability.
Better. Yeah.
That's the only reason. Like, men don't cry to cry. Men don't express emotion or get upset. That's not what we do. Yes, we will be emotional at times, and there's times where it's certainly appropriate. But I don't like the vulnerability movement because people do it just for the sake of being vulnerable, and they score virtue points.
It's without purpose.
Right. Yeah. So I'm all for being vulnerable if you're only doing it to say, yeah, I suck at this, so I want to acknowledge it so that I don't suck at this for the rest of my life. That's the only reason a man would be vulnerable. Otherwise, why would you tell your enemy your position? Oh, you know what? Like 90% of our place is secure, but you know, hey, to make this a more fair fight, let me tell you the 10% that's not shored up, and I would have you and suggest that you attack this place over here. Like, why would you ever do that? Of course you wouldn't do that. What you would do is you would exert some effort towards shoring up that 10%, but you have to acknowledge it, but only to cement it, to shore it up.
Yeah. And instead we're like, oh, no. They'll celebrate the fact that I'm a victim, and then they'll feel guilty that they had opportunities I didn't.
And then they'll leave us alone because we're virtuous. oh, this isn't a fair fight. I don't want to exploit that because it's not a fair fight.
Yeah, that's funny.
On that
Ah,
note, I have been watching Cobra Kai, by the way, Kip.
it's great, isn't it?
So good. So
So
good.
funny.
Oh,
And
I just want to be badass.
yeah, I know, and that's the best part about it is he's so politically incorrect. Like, and this is the insight. Here's some Cobra Kai wisdom for everybody, and this is what makes this show great. Is he's a complete jerk. He says things that are, he attacks things that people can't change. Like he's attacking a kid with a cleft
Yeah, but it's
lip. Like,
so true, man.
but here's what's so cool about it is he tells them what they need to hear to become better and move beyond it.
Right.
And that's where there's some truth in this show. You're like, there's some truth to that approach,
It's
And
all
so,
true. Like,
yeah, it's pretty
totally
awesome.
uncomfortable and it makes you cringe. You're like, ooh. And then you're like, but that's actually a pretty good point.
Yeah, yeah, and he's learning too, but he's learning that everything's not about just being badass, But it's
That's the
so
part
funny.
I don't agree with. Cobra Kai Wisdom. That's the title of this podcast, guys. Cobra
yeah.
Kai Wisdom.
And we should just dissect that show and we'll go over certain segments of wisdom
That
Johnny
actually would
Lawrence
be really
drops.
fun. How many episodes or how many seasons? Because there's 2 on Netflix, right?
Just 2 seasons, and I think season 3 starts in January. And by the way, I want to be really clear. I'm not a Netflix I've never watched even Game of Thrones
I'm not either,
or
man.
all these. So this is like the only like series thing that I've ever even like watched, and it's super great. It's
All right,
super
so
funny.
here's the real question: are you team Miyagi-Do or Cobra Kai?
Oh, Cobra Kai all day.
For sure, for
Yeah,
sure.
Cobra Kai all day.
If any of you think differently, stop listening. Unsubscribe to this podcast.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap it up, man.
All right. So, guys, we mentioned this earlier, but to submit questions for future AMAs or just to join the conversation, you can do so on Facebook at facebook.com/Order of Man. And, of course, to learn more about the Iron Council, our exclusive brotherhood, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. And, one of the questions earlier, just to go back to it, was how do we take this coddling of America and get past the celebration of mediocrity and victimhood and rise up and celebrate masculinity and strength and growth and rising above circumstances? You get on the court in life and you take action. And one of the actions that you guys can take is sharing this message, because that's literally what this podcast is all about. And you can do so by joining us on YouTube, subscribing to the podcast, sharing episodes. I'm assuming it's Cody or you, but like we have snippets of different aspects of podcasts. So you can get a short 1 minute, 2 minute, 5 minute video of a particular subject and easily share that with people where they don't have to listen to the whole, hour or hour and a half of the podcast. So look to those YouTube videos, share messages, and help us spread the word. And another way you can do that is follow Mr. Mickler on Instagram and Twitter at Ryan Mickler. And of course, wearing the swag. So
That's right. I thought you were going to say the way you do that is by being badass.
by being badass, I should actually. That's I'm thinking of a T-shirt all of a sudden. Yeah.
Heck yeah. All right, guys. Hey, look, we appreciate you. We're glad to have you guys in the Iron Council. And even if you're not, we're glad you're listening in, tuning in, showing up as fathers and husbands and leaders in your community, and you're leading your families and your people well. And that's what we need. I mean, we're right on the heels of this presidential election, obviously turbulent times. I don't see it getting better regardless of who wins. I just don't. I see it becoming more divisive, more polarizing. And I think there's a real opportunity in these interesting times to step up and lead with dignity and class and honor and respect and do the right things. And we have an opportunity to do that. And it starts with you first. We talked a lot about that in the podcast. And then it starts with your family from there. And then it starts to trickle out into your neighborhoods, your communities, and potentially even a movement similar to what we're doing here. But it starts with you, and that's what this whole podcast is about. So we'll be back on Friday for the Friday Field Notes with a either second-term president or a new president, which should be interesting regardless. And we'll just keep driving on. It doesn't matter. We're going to keep driving on and doing the things that we do. So we appreciate you guys. And like I said, we'll be back Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.